His name is Asoka, and he will rewrite history. His story takes place in India, a cradle of civilizations. Home to the oldest religions in the world. Religions with hundreds of millions of followers. But where Gandhi called for peace, fanatics now threaten the world's biggest democracy. In the search for a more harmonious future, India is re-examining its heroic past. Carved in stone, Asoka's story tells of the rise of Buddhism to a global religion. This bloodthirsty ruler became a sovereign of peace. A conversion that changed the history of the world. In 272 BC, Pataliputra, the capital of the Maurya Empire. India is at a turning point. The king's second son, Prince Asoka, hurries to the palace, where his father lies dying. As a soldier, Asoka has always served the king loyally. Now he wants his reward. On his deathbed, his father should name Asoka his successor. The Maurya dynasty has conquered almost the whole of India in bloody wars. The center of power in this vast realm is the imperial city of Pataliputra. With over 150,000 inhabitants, this is one of the biggest cities in the world. This great conurbation on the Ganges is the spiritual and religious center of India. A statue found in the city is especially revered to this day. According to legend, these are the features of the power-hungry Asoka. The prince is determined that power in the Maurya Empire shall be his. This is his last chance to demand the throne of his dying father. But the king has already turned him down, they say because his son is too ugly. Another prince will be crowned in his place. When his father dies, the struggle for the throne begins. There's no such thing as brotherly love among princes in India. The rightful heir knows that as well as anyone. He's on his way to Pataliputra. Everything will now be decided at the capital city. Any shameful act is now permitted, as long as it leads to the goal. At least according to the Book of Kautilya, the instruction manual for kings. It's an introduction to the struggle for power. The advice it contains is chillingly practical.
If you are too weak to defeat the enemy in an honest confrontation, you should employ the most deceitful methods possible.
There's no doubt Asoka has learned this lesson well. He makes his plans to destroy his hated rival. Asoka challenges his brother to a duel. The legend tells how Asoka mercilessly seized power. There are legends that he murdered all of his rivals, 99 brothers. Perhaps not all these stories should be taken literally.
Well, this is all wrapped in the realm of legends and speculations. The only thing that we have known about his accession to power is the accounts that we get in some of the late Buddhist legends. They have tried to underline how ruthless he was in coming to the throne, how he killed his so-called 99 brothers, that he tried to be somewhat unscrupulous in getting to the throne is not improbable, but something not very unusual either in the realm of politics of the time anywhere in the world.
From now on, anyone who dares to rebel in his empire will be crushed with brute force. His enemies soon give him a name, Ashoka, Asoka the Cruel. Until one day, a miraculous change takes place. Wounded in battle, Asoka is treated in a monastery, a Buddhist monastery. Devotees of the Buddha learn to overcome suffering through meditation and through a virtuous way of life. This is a time of religious revolution in India and of a new search for meaning. King Asoka is on his own spiritual quest. At the monastery, there's a fateful meeting. Asoka encounters a Buddhist woman who tells him of her faith. Our life is full of pain, but peace can release us. At this time, Buddhism is just one of many Indian sects. Asoka has never heard words like these.
The
religious world was, in a word, pluralistic. There were very many different movements. On the one hand, the well-established Brahmins with their ritual offerings, and on the other, a number of ascetic orders, like the Jainas, who still exist today, the Buddhists, and others like the Ajivikas, who have since disappeared.
Today, there are 500 million Buddhists around the world, thanks to Asoka. Symbols of their faith can be found everywhere, especially in Asia. The teachings of the Buddha, the illustrious one, are inseparable from the story of his life. As Siddhartha, a king's son, he could have enjoyed a carefree existence. But Buddha recognized that riches and power are no protection against illness and death. Renouncing luxury, he wandered and meditated until he attained enlightenment. Today, Buddha's peaceful teachings find followers throughout the world. King Asoka needs to hear more about Buddha's ideas, so different from anything he's known. At gatherings with the monks, he learns about the eternal cycle of rebirth and about karma. Desire, egoism, and anger create bad karma. And karma creates the future for all beings in an eternal cycle of becoming and passing away. Belief in karma and rebirth remains very much alive in present-day India. In Hinduism, the country's leading religion, now as in Ashoka's time. This is the sacred river of the Hindus, the Ganges. Here, the faithful purify themselves for a better karma in the next life. The gods diverted this heavenly river onto earth so that humans could wash themselves clean of their sins. Hindu rituals are thousands of years old. They have barely changed since Ashoka's reign. In spite of his first encounter with Buddhism, Ashoka is still a power-hungry tyrant, always looking to conquer new territories. In 261 BC, he raises a mighty army to invade Kalinga. It's one of the last independent states in India. This will be one of the greatest campaigns in Indian history. The kingdom of Kalinga sticks into the Maurya Empire like a thorn, a permanent source of irritation. By taking its capital, Shishupalga, Ashoka will crush the final resistance to his rule in the Indian subcontinent. In the book of Kautilya, it says,
"A king must above all regard the ruler of a neighboring land as his natural enemy."
Today, only a few ruins show where the royal palace once stood in Kalinga's capital. But this city was constructed according to a clear plan.
The complex of Shishupalga is unique in early Indian history. It was very probably designed according to the advice of the ancient Indian Guide to Statecraft, the Book of Kautilya, and the defense plans set out in it.
It's fascinating to reconstruct the sophisticated mechanism of the city gates. Anyone who wants to enter the city passes through the outer gate into a sealed-off courtyard. The inner gate is only opened after inspection by the guards. Shishupalga is impregnable. It can never be taken in a frontal attack. With his army gathered in front of the fortifications, Ashoka knows that. He's waiting for the defenders to come to him. He camps patiently with his forces until Shishupalga's food supply runs out. Then the defenders will have to leave their city. He can meet them on the field of battle. But what does Ashoka really want in Kalinga?
Ashoka never tells us why he went to Kalinga, but we can make some guesses. We know that Kalinga had very many elephants. Anyone who had elephants was potentially a dangerous enemy, because elephants were the tanks of their time. They were in great demand, and as a result, they were very valuable.
But Ashoka has a secret weapon. He will use a mixture of drugs to prime his elephants for battle. Now they will crash fearlessly through the enemy lines. And Ashoka will crush the last opposition to his rule. He orders his battle-hardened veterans forward. Hundreds of crazed battle elephants storm the enemy ranks. High on their backs, Ashoka's soldiers are invincible. The defenders of Kalinga fight desperately, but they are annihilated. For decades, Indian historians and archaeologists have puzzled over the Battle of Kalinga. Supposed relics of the fight are constantly turning up. But there's a good deal of skepticism about them. So far, not a single find can be conclusively attributed to this conflict. So how can we be so certain what actually happened at Kalinga 2,300 years ago? A famous Indian historical text records the result of the battle.
The king conquered Kalinga 8 years after his coronation. 100,000 men were killed, 150,000 were deported, and many more died of other causes.
But we can only understand this report thanks to an extraordinary piece of good luck. Across the whole Indian subcontinent, there are rocks with mysterious inscriptions. For a long time, no one had the slightest idea how to interpret this unknown script. No one could crack the code. Years of patient effort produced no progress. Then, in 1837, scholars made the breakthrough. They found ancient coins with inscriptions in 2 languages. On one side were Greek letters. On the other, the Indian script. Slowly, the scholars were able to piece together centuries of Indian history. And the biggest surprise was that the inscriptions turned out to be written by King Asoka himself. He composed his own history and then had it carved in stone.
One main reason for the significance of Asoka today is the fact that he left us this multitude of inscriptions. These are the earliest written accounts we have from the South Asian subcontinent.
And the amazing thing is that the inscriptions do not celebrate Asoka's victory. They tell of a man torn by feelings of guilt.
The king feels deep remorse for having conquered Kalinga. He is deeply pained by the killing, dying, and deportation that takes place when an unconquered country is conquered.
He has to face the consequences of his actions on the battlefield itself. Mighty king, you are in a position to take so many lives. Surely you can give one single life back to this dead child. Suddenly, Asoka sees his victory as a defeat. The bloodbath of Kalinga changes the king forever. At the peak of his power, this unscrupulous murderer and callous conqueror renounces violence forever. He will never wage war again. When did a conqueror with no more enemies to fear ever show this kind of regret? After his traumatic experience at Kalinga, Asoka finally converts to Buddhism, the religion of peace. This turning point in the life of a great sovereign can still evoke admiration and astonishment today.
Well, I wouldn't like to compare Ashoka with anyone except Mahatma Gandhi. And my reason for that comparison is belief of both of them in non-violence.
Mahatma Gandhi, father of non-violent non-cooperation and fighter for human rights, is still revered throughout the world. He steered India to independence by peaceful means. For his vision of a world without war or violence, Gandhi, the great soul, referred back to an example from Indian history, Asoka. Just like his predecessor, the Maurya king, Gandhi was an ardent pacifist. His goal was to establish a non-violent state on Indian soil. As father of the nation, he urged a return to India's cultural roots. The spinning wheel became Gandhi's symbol for independence, his way to pick up the strands of his country's harmonious, productive past. After the Battle of Kalinga, Asoka adopts new policies. He's always available to hear his subjects' complaints about corrupt judges and officials. He intends to become the ideal sovereign for his people. He will usher in a period of peace, harmony, and prosperity for the Maurya Empire. This newly transformed king delivers his message of peace to neighboring states too.
Let them be reassured. My only wish is that they should live without fear of me and trust me. I wish them happiness, not sorrow.
To transmit his messages, Asoka invents a new form of communication. He has tall columns erected throughout the empire, on which his proclamations will be inscribed. Today, we know where Asoka's columns were made. They all came from one place, the quarries of the Chunar Hills in northern India. Traces of the work of the ancient stonemasons are everywhere. For decades, making Asoka's columns was a major industry here. The offcuts of this mass production can still easily be found. 2,300 years ago, Maurya craftsmen left them where they fell. They rolled the finished columns down to the river and loaded them onto ships. Then the columns started their journey across India. In a few years, the whole empire is filled with Asoka's pillars and rock inscriptions. Each of the columns is 13 meters high, weighing 30 tons. It takes armies of workers to erect them at the designated spots. Getting this great project underway is a masterpiece of organization and craftsmanship. No effort is too great to spread the king's propaganda. Asoka's columns are topped off with the king's new symbol, the Buddhist lion. Now Asoka has declared himself a Buddhist, finally. Some of the columns are set directly beside Buddhist temples. They are to spread the roar of Buddha to the world. This capital bears 4 lions, so Buddha's message can be transmitted to all 4 points of the compass. Asoka's lions will become the national emblem of the Indian Republic 2,000 years later. When the country attains its independence in 1947, the founding fathers make this symbol a mark of the new nation's desire for peace. Another ancient Buddhist symbol is chosen as the design for the new national flag, the wheel, a symbol the Maurya king had already adopted for himself. In this way, Asoka the Buddhist becomes the mythical founding father of the modern Indian nation. His legacy lives on in the present day. And not only at official events. The king's inscriptions are revered and cared for wherever they're found. Simple messages that have lost none of their power.
All the people are my children. And as I wish my children well, so I wish all people contentment and happiness in this world and the next.
Beside one of his inscriptions, an elephant is carved into the rock to make the king's proclamation unmissable.
Well, as far as the need for getting across to people, I don't think there could have been better medium than getting messages engraved on stone. The fact that many of his inscriptions in terms of their locations are on the highways, on the roadways, in such areas which must have been visited by the people, shows once again the sensitivity of the ruler and the manner in which he tries to realize that how important it is for him to communicate with the people of his territory.
With Asoka's new politics, the Maurya Empire thrives. The king redistributes land. He brings new fields under cultivation. Never again should his people suffer from hunger. He especially encourages the growth of medicinal herbs for both humans and animals. Prosperity spreads throughout the empire. Everywhere new villages spring up. Asoka builds schools and hospitals and introduces fairer taxes. His reforms are carried out even in the most distant provinces of the empire. And Asoka urges his subjects to renounce violence. In his multi-ethnic realm, everyone must benefit from the protection of the king. That's true not only of people, but animals too. Asoka promotes vegetarianism, and he himself sets an example.
Formerly, in the royal kitchens, hundreds of thousands of animals were killed every day. But now, only 3 creatures are killed. And in time, not even these 3 creatures will be killed.
Asoka's influence has remained powerful in India. Respect for animals is just as important today. Most of the population is still vegetarian. And animal protection is even written into the constitution. Hindus believe that treating animals well is important for gathering good karma for the next life. The belief in karma also explains the way Hindus treat their dead. Most Indians are not buried. Pious Hindus burn their dead. Ghats are the places on the shore of the Ganges where the funeral pyres are built. The fire is said to free the soul of the departed from its physical shell. The flames purify the soul of all its sins. This Hindu ritual has no equivalent in Buddhism.
Buddhism should be understood as a turning away from a religion based on offerings. It's a turn towards a new rationalism, an appeal to a new social class, a town-based middle-class population, an opening towards new and different social groupings, concentrating very much on merchants, businessmen and craftsmen.
Auf Händler, auf Kaufleute, auf Handwerker, abzielend.
Many coins found from Ashoka's time are evidence of flourishing trade in the Maurya Empire. Every silver coin has stamped symbols. One motif appears again and again, the sun, the symbol of the Maurya dynasty, the sun that will never set. The capital city, Pataliputra, becomes a melting pot of cultures. From here, an efficient administration runs the empire. King Ashoka finally seems to have realized his vision of a peaceful and just state.
We could say that he did work out something which may, in modern terminology, be called a welfare state. And the accent that he put on the need to maintain life, not just the humans, but also of the animals, is quite significant from that point of view. And the sensitivity that he showed towards being eco-friendly influences, in terms of modern terminology, then again I would say that he was perhaps far ahead of his times.
Ashoka thinks of everything, including the religious minorities in his empire. For the many ascetics, he has caves excavated in great granite cliffs. Ashoka does not promote only Buddhism in his country. He looks after every other religion too.
Asoka hat diese Höhlen einem Orden.
Asoka gave these caves to an order that called themselves the Ajivika. They were ascetics like the Buddhists and the Jainas, but they didn't reject comfort and luxury. Perhaps that was the reason these comfortable caves were made only for the Ajivika.
Direkt und nur an die Ajivikas gingen.
The delicately carved caves were a refuge for the Ajivika in the monsoon period. The ceiling is carved to look like the straw roofs of the huts where the monks once sheltered in the rainy season. The Ajivika's abandoned caves are a reminder of a time when all religions could be practiced in peace. Including Hinduism, the oldest and most widespread of India's religions. Today, the majority of Indians, more than 800 million people, are Hindus. For thousands of years, Hindus have celebrated the Aarti ceremony that accompanies all their religious festivals. The priests bless the festival as they swing their lights. The flames are said to transfer divine strengths to humanity. To this day, Hinduism respects Ashoka's commandment of tolerance.
All religions should be known everywhere, for they all have as their aim self-control and a pure heart. We should listen to the principles of other religions and respect them.
In India's great cities today, a multitude of different religions live side by side. The biggest democracy in the world also has the widest variety of faiths, exactly as King Ashoka would have wished.
He stresses very emphatically that if you are deprecating others' religion only to glorify your own religion, then surely you are not taking interest of your own religion either. You need to be understanding to the religion of the others.
In spite of such proclamations of tolerance, religious conflicts still spark violence in India. The state regularly has to intervene, mediating between fundamentalist Hindus and Muslims. The tensions between religious extremists overflow in unrest, attacks, and pogroms. But the majority of Indians today desire a balance of the cultures, just as Ashoka himself prescribed. At a temple in Bhubaneswar, pious Hindus revere a holy stone. According to legend, this stone was a gift of the Buddhist Asoka. But these Hindus aren't praying to Buddha. For them, this holy stone is a symbol of the god Shiva. In the night of Shiva, they ritually adorn it with flowers. The god of creation and new beginnings will cleanse his worshippers of their bad karma. Ashoka's reforms may change this country, but one tradition that has marked life here forever is untouched by his proclamations: the caste system. It still exists and is increasingly controversial in modern India. The caste you belong to is established at birth, and it decides your future life, with little hope of social advancement. Perhaps a Buddhist and a philanthropist like Ashoka should have abolished the caste system as well.
Well, on this complex institution called caste, I don't think we should be taking a blanket position to the effect that Buddhism was against caste. Ashoka, while he talks about the need for peace and harmony, is not unaware of social divisions within the society. We do not get any message in so very clear terms that he is thinking in terms of abolition of that system.
Ashoka's power has its limits. More than ever, the king wants to care for his people like a father. Given the size of his empire, this is an impossibility.
Es ist ganz offensichtlich, dass Ashoka in seinen
It is quite evident that Ashoka overestimated his own capabilities in his task as a ruler. In one of his proclamations, he insists that messengers must be admitted to him at any time of the day or night, wherever he might be. And he offers various possibilities, whether he's in the cowsheds, or in his coach, or wherever he happens to be. He should always be confronted at once with any kind of imperial business.
As a perfect ruler, Ashoka wants to set an example of religious zeal too. The king sets out on a long pilgrimage. It takes almost a year. He travels hundreds of kilometers through his empire. His goals are the holiest sites of Buddhism, still places of pilgrimage today. From the capital city of Pataliputra, Ashoka turns west, towards Sarnath. It was here in the deer park that Buddha first spread his ideas. They say the deer themselves were drawn by his teachings. At the place where Buddha is said to have preached, Asoka erects a great shrine or stupa, still a holy memorial for Buddhists today. But what was behind this great journey?
Der Grund für die Pilgerreise ist wohl darin zu sehen,
The reason for his pilgrimage must have been that at some point he felt he wasn't close enough to his Buddhist faith.
nahe genug war,
Perhaps he felt that he hadn't practiced it ardently enough.
diesen Glauben zu praktizieren.
From Sarnath, Asoka and his train move on to Bodh Gaya. This is the most important station on his journey, for it was here that Buddha attained enlightenment. Perhaps Asoka hopes to find his soul's peace here. The Mahabodhi temple in Bodh Gaya is the holiest place in Buddhism. This building from the 2nd century AD is one of the oldest sacred sites in the Indian subcontinent. The Mahabodhi temple is the center of the world for Buddhists. Inside the monument is a colossal statue of Buddha meditating in the lotus position. And right next to the temple is the Bodhi tree. It's an offshoot of the holy tree under which Buddha attained enlightenment. Today, Bodhi trees are at the center of religious ceremonies right across the country. For Hindus, this tree is home to the 3 highest gods, Vishnu, Brahma, and Saraswati. Dancing around the Bodhi tree makes wishes come true for a happy marriage and male children. King Asoka moves on from Bodh Gaya to the final station of his great pilgrimage. This is the longest part of his journey. He's aiming for an important trading station in the Maurya Empire, Sanchi. Here, Asoka will erect a monument to his faith. Sanchi will be the site of India's greatest stupa, built by King Asoka at the end of his long journey. This monument, at a center of commerce, will celebrate both the king himself and the increasing religious zeal with which he governs his empire.
What, after all, is he telling people? He's asking them to behave courteously to one another, to servants, to slaves, to masters, to father, to mother, to elders, to teachers, to be liberal, not to be harsh, to be kind, not to be cruel, not to be lazy, etc., etc.
But perhaps this sovereign has demanded too much of his subjects. Increasingly, he encounters resistance from the people. They're no longer prepared to submit to his tyranny of gentleness. And with all his fine words, Asoka still needs his soldiers to force through his idealistic goals.
Der moralische Rigorismus,
The moral rigor expressed in his inscriptions does not always seem to have been warmly received by his
über
subjects.
seinen Untertanen gestoßen zu sein. Wir wissen aus seinen Inschriften, dass
We know from his inscriptions that he regarded some festivals that his people celebrated as useless or even harmful,
hat, als
and he banned them.
bezeichnet hat oder gar als schädlich.
In 250 BC, Asoka convenes a Buddhist council at Pataliputra. At the Council of the Faithful, Asoka announces a decision that will have consequences for the future of humanity. Buddhism is to be carried beyond the homeland of the Enlightened One, out into the whole world. The king sends missionaries from the capital to all points of the compass. Buddhism is permanently established in many of the countries on India's borders. But this offensive of faith has its price.
Asoka hat der Legende nach sehr viel Geld ausgegeben.
According to legend, Ashoka spent a great deal of money spreading Buddhism beyond his borders. He sent missionaries out from Pataliputra in all directions, to today's Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Thailand, and he plundered the national treasury for that purpose, to the disadvantage of the state and also of his own dynasty.
Offenbar zum Nachteil des Staates und auch zum Nachteil seiner Dynastie.
Opposition grows to Ashoka's missionary zeal in the empire. Furious citizens attack the symbols of his power. The golden age of the great Maurya sovereign is reaching its end.
Es gibt Anzeichen dafür.
There are signs that the reins of power are slowly slipping from his hands in the final years of his rule, that he's losing influence in parts of his empire. From about the last 10 years of his reign, there are no new inscriptions.
Ashoka ruled India for more than 30 years. As Chandashoka, Ashoka the Cruel, he spread fear and terror. But this brutal ruler had a conscience. Through Buddhism, he finally found his way to peace, with himself and with the world. In 233 BC, Ashoka dies, the greatest leader of the Maurya Empire. After his death, the country descends into civil war. His enemies restore the old order on the rubble of the Maurya Empire. King Ashoka is a forgotten man. It will be more than 2,000 years before India remembers its ancient king as a founding father of the new republic.
I would say that he was an astute ruler who really strove very hard to combine the duties and prerogatives of kingship, of ruling, with elements of power and justice. Such a combination is rather rare as far as Indian history is concerned.
His greatest deed made Ashoka immortal. The king of the Maurya took the peaceful teachings of the Enlightened One out into the world, and so prepared the way for Buddhism, one of humanity's great religions.